Yeah, I mean, what you just said of like, okay, I'm gonna be perfect today. I just had a call with a client like 2 hours ago, and she binged, and I'm like, okay, let's walk through, let's look at what happened. And I told her, I'm like, so you started binging when you said to yourself in the morning, I'm gonna do really good today.
Mhm.
That's when it started. And she kind of laughed. I'm like, so hear me out. And what I'd love to talk about today is just what you highlighted. Like, I love to look at the physiological side of like what's going on here, and also the psychological side of what's going on here. So on the psychological side, pressure. What happens when you're under a lot of pressure? Eventually you need release, right? So from the psychological side of things, when we look at food as I have to have this outside in metric of perfection, eventually you're going to want to release from that. And guess what the release is from this restrictive mindset? Not doing it anymore and binging, right? So it's the act of trying to control your food intake itself creates on the psychological level this entire pattern. So, as an example, I have leftover Halloween candy in my house. I don't know. I have M&Ms. I do. I admit I've got M&Ms. They're one of my favorite, like, old school when I was standard American diet things. I haven't even I identified this on this call with this client. I haven't even thought about it. I was like, what do I have? Because I'm like, you have stuff in your house like that, right? And she's
Right.
like, uh, yeah, yeah. I'm like, yes, okay. It's okay. It wasn't like I'm not drilling you. The reality is these foods are around us all the time. And even if they weren't in your house, the whole like, I'm going to get it all out of my house, that doesn't work either, because you have a car and you have a credit card or a debit card. Okay. So, like this whole pressured thing, it removes us from reality. And if we can accept reality of, I can eat whatever I want. And it's like, no, I can't. I'm trying to lose weight. No, I can't, Tara. I can't. No, that the reality is that you can eat whatever you want. And you've proved that many, many times. That's reality. That's reality. So if we can come into reality and accept that we can eat whatever we want and stop putting so much pressure on ourselves to be perfect today, whatever that is, we can come back into the present moment and we can come into reality. And all that matters is right now. Literally, it's not cliche, it's not woo woo, it's literally true. All we have is right now. And if we can remember, all I have to do is think about right now. I don't have to think about next Thursday. I don't have to think about my this whole right now. What do I choose? I can eat whatever I want. What can I eat that is self-honoring, that will give me nutrients, that sounds really good to me, it like tastes good. It's important to honor that. You don't need to eat bland chicken. Like, I wouldn't live that life either, right? So for my pattern is, what sounds good to me right now? Right. And so it's like, and I have some clutch things like my yogurt bowls or my, I probably go get it after this. I've been wanting like a spaghetti squash with like some, regenerative ground beef spaghetti
Mhm.
type thing. Oh, I love that. And so when we focus on that, it's like, that's what I want to have. It's not, I can't have M&Ms. Don't eat those. I don't want the M&Ms because I don't want to feel like that after. I want to feel good. So that's the psychological side, is when we have too much pressure and restriction on ourselves in whatever area that is, the only way to get release really from that restriction that's in your mind is to do the exact thing that you don't want to do. So it goes into porn addiction. It's the same thing. It
Mhm.
is the same thing as food. It's don't do it, don't do it. Shame, guilt, don't do it, don't do it. Get the only way that your little inner rebel is going to find relief from that restrictive pressure is to do it. Right. And so
Yeah.
it's not about that. It's about, I know I can do that. I mean, that right there is like the first stage of relief. It's like, I know I can do that. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. Do it if you want to, right? We gotta give ourselves that on this whole thing, because only then can we tap into our mature energy of, what do I really want though? How do I feel when I make that choice? Okay, maybe you're going to look at porn again, or maybe you're going to eat 20 bags of M&Ms. Okay, remove shame, guilt, judgment. It's just being real with yourself. Like, how do I feel right now? And is there something else that I could choose that makes me excited and happy and I want it, that doesn't cause me to feel like that. And so, yeah, that's the psychological side. And then we can go all into the neurotransmitters and all that stuff as well if you'd like.
Well, I would love to go get down to the physical part, because I think when people understand that it's not their fault and it's not a lack of willpower,
Yeah.
right? That they're
Yeah.
like every other human being, and
Right.
the chemical reactions that are occurring is
Yes.
normal,
Yes.
right? And that this is something that every single person on earth, I believe, has experienced. And maybe it's not just with food, maybe it's some other addiction or whatever it is,
Mhm.
but the patterns and the chemical reactions are the same.
Yes.
But the hard thing is that food, everybody needs to eat every day. Not
Yeah.
everybody needs to see porn every day or drink
No.
alcohol or do cocaine every day, right? So you're faced with this thing that you have to do every day. And how do we make that uh, in a normal relationship? So
Yeah.
let's get into the physical part of the restrictive binge cycle.
Well, and with alcohol or porn or cocaine or whatever it is, if they don't understand, if a person doesn't understand what's going on biochemically inside of them, and that is the only method that they have found to get out of that state, they do feel like they need to do that every day.
Yeah.
It's their only, and so for people, food, most people, food, I always tell people, I'm like, okay, so you're exhibiting all the signs of low dopamine and low serotonin. Food, especially the processed stuff, like that's a really quick way to get out of that state. So
Mhm.
pretty smart, but
Right.
then not because of all the fallout, right? And so let's look at it. So I want to talk about dopamine and serotonin first of all. I also want to talk about ghrelin. So dopamine, I've got a study here. I can give you the link to if you want, Sarah, but there's a study showing that food fasting and just food restriction in general decreases baseline dopamine levels and enhances dopamine release in response to rewards such as food. Okay. So if
Wow.
you're trying to restrict calories, it's well established that your dopamine levels are going to go down. And guess what? When your dopamine levels are down, you don't care about stuff as much. You get in that like, sorry for like, but the F it mode, like I don't care. I'm good. Like forget that stuff. That's what low dopamine feels very depressing. And you're not going to feel driven and on top of yourself. And when you're calorically restricting, dopamine levels going down. And not only that, but you're getting an enhanced dopamine response to the food.
Right.
Dopamine response drives a lot of human behavior. We are very easily programmable through a dopamine response, in case you haven't ever been on TikTok, right? So it will just own you, or any social media platform. That's what's happening, right? And
Yeah.
so I think it's important, first of all, for people to like give themselves that. As you said, it's like, okay, if you're going in caloric restriction, baseline dopamine's going down and you're getting an enhanced response. Let's talk about serotonin. So, low serotonin levels have also been associated with eating disorders, and restrictive eating can lower your serotonin levels. So, guess how you get serotonin back up? Real easy way, eat food. So, like looking at this is like, okay, so what do we do with this information? Oh, last thing, ghrelin, the hunger hormone is kind of the nickname for it. Obvious. I mean, it's kind of obvious. I don't think you need to study, but ghrelin is going to increase when you're calorically restricting because your body's like, no, we don't want to let go of all these fat stores. Make sure you eat more food so we can hang on to these for survival. So now you're in like, think about that. Like, if anybody who has ever binged on food could please give themselves a break right now, you're in
Yeah.
a chemical state in which your serotonin's low, your dopamine's low, and your ghrelin hunger hormone, which our hormones drive us like crazy. If you ever had a first kiss when you were 16 years old, you know what that it's like all of a sudden I'm not thinking straight right now. It's really hard to win a battle against your chemicals. So let's give ourselves all that. And then let's talk about strategies. Like, what do we do about that? We're trying to lose weight. So this is why I am so big on intelligently approaching a calorie deficit. Okay, so people say it's all about calories. I get that, but if you're eating a calorie deficit of only Twix bars, you are going to be starving, low energy, but if you're eating a calorie deficit of whole proteins, real foods, healthy fats, vegetables, whole eggs, and all of this stuff, think about that just on a common sense level. The quantity of food and the satiety impact it's going to bring when you're eating real whole foods from nature versus Twix bars with the same amount of calories.
Right.
It's pretty obvious, even for someone who isn't into nutrition. It's like, I'm going to be way fuller on that for longer. And guess what? You can like mix in a little bit of a treat, some dark chocolate, or like what it doesn't have to be all only chicken and vegetables. You can mix some stuff in there too, but you want a lot of that. Last thing I wanted to say is that ketogenic diets, which I feel like was somewhat applicable to this audience here, suppresses the increase in the secretion of ghrelin. Right. And so that's nice. I think that's a big impact. The reason why a lot of people are able to go into those states, you're obviously just metabolically upgrading everything if you have any sort of metabolic dysfunction, but you're doing it in a state in which you can now suppress ghrelin at the same time. And as you mentioned, increases GABA, and GABA is really nice too. And I last on the neurochemical talk, and I'll stop being so nerdy, but like GABA. Okay. So a lot of people who experience anxiety, I don't think they know about glutamate and GABA. So I'm going to try to share this as like in plain terms as I can.
Be scientific and nerdy.
Okay. Let's be nerdy. Okay. So glutamate is an excitatory neurotransmitter. And some people, their baseline levels of glutamate are higher than others. This is in like the neurotyping testing that I do in my coaching. So I do a personality test and I can tell a lot about somebody's baseline neurochemicals based off of their personality. You're dopamine dominant, you're going to be competitive, driven, you love to win, you have like this higher perspective. If you're glutamate, if someone's high in glutamate, they're going to be really emotional. And it's beautiful about them, right? It's a wonderful quality. They're very connected to their emotions. But here's what happens. Glutamate converts to GABA, mostly in your gut. And there's an enzyme that gets released that helps that conversion happen. When you eat sugar, so high fructose corn syrup or sugar, people talk about fructose. I'm like, dude, I'm personally not worried about fructose at all from fruit. But from high fructose corn syrup and sugar, that's such an astronomically artificial your body's like, what? And so fructose blocks the production of that enzyme that converts glutamate into GABA. And so that's why you take somebody, if you connect with already being like an emotional person, you feel deeply, you love deeply, you're sentimental, you care about others, you probably are like a little higher in glutamate than others. And then, so if you notice you eat sugar and all this stuff, and all of a sudden you're really anxious the whole next day, let that be a clue in for you. And then guess what happens? You're all anxious, you're overthinking, and you want out of it. So what do?
You eat.
Yeah, you turn to alcohol or more junk food, and just the whole thing is just this cycle that just keeps going and going and going, And so one of my favorite ways to help people kind of get out of that cycle is one, you got to find like yummy replacements. Right? Like I do not just only eat chicken and vegetables and eggs all day. I have like Built bars. I've got like these yogurt bowls I make with like Lily's chocolate chips and it's like freaking delicious, So find your stuff, like find your yummy stuff so you like your lifestyle. And then if you can, like, I'm always like, what will turn the needle for them? Like, how do I get them out of this like neurochemical state they're in? And I really think exercise is one of the most powerful ways to do that because you're going to upregulate GABA, serotonin, dopamine, also norepinephrine. So you're going to like have a satiety impact on that. So now all of a sudden you're in this neurochemical state where you're not needing food to get you there. Right. So if you're in this cycle of binge and restrict, one of the things I did, because I've walked this road, I definitely was this person. I would start going for walks in the afternoon. And it just took care of it for me. I was like, oh, I'm just thirsty, need some minerals, go for a walk. Now I don't need food to do that for me. And I just went for a walk and cleared my head and increased my lymphatic flow. And like, wow. So finding solutions is a big part of like getting out of this, but just wanted to share a lot of it is neurochemical. And that's why it's important for these kind of conversations to happen, I think, so people can understand, like, you're not just a loser. You're not just like a crappy willpower person. There's neurochemicals at play. And if you can learn how they work and how to modulate them yourself in healthier ways, boom shakalaka.
Absolutely. So I want to touch on a couple things. When you're stressed over, okay, I can't binge, I can't binge, I can't binge, that stress is
Mhm.
increasing cortisol and epinephrine, which is increasing your blood sugar and
Yeah.
increasing fat storage. So just by stressing over it, you are increasing your fat storage, which you're trying to avoid from binging, right? So
I know.
that is one more reason to check off the list. Okay, just calm down. Let's do all the things that Tara said. We need to increase our GABA. How do we relax and reduce our cortisol? We take a walk. We move forward. The thing I love about walking is physically and mentally and spiritually you're moving forward.
Yeah.
You're lowering that cortisol. You are taking one step at a time. You're moving away from that binge. All of these metaphorical ways and physical ways you are actually taking action.
Yeah.
I love walking, and you're out in nature. You're getting the amazing fuel from the sun,
I
right?
know. Yes,
Not
which is an appetite, like, it's fuel. It literally is, so you're less likely to need it from food. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then what you said about, okay, I need to make some swaps. What am I going to focus on? Because if you say, I'm not going to think about the ice cream, I'm not going to think about the ice cream, I'm not going to think about the ice cream. It's just like saying, I'm not going to think about the pink elephant. What's the pink elephant? And what do you think about? You think
Exactly.
about the pink elephant. So you want to focus or crowd out the bad stuff with the good stuff. So I have
Right.
options.